Hey everybody, so I did warn you a few weeks ago that coming up in my schedule, I would have some matches and days where I just can't fit everything in, and so today I did run out of time to film my beautiful face. But hey, there is still the 5 headlines either way. A reminder, if you do want to make sure I always have time for the full production, subscribe to the channel and get all your friends to subscribe too. Until then, I'll still be doing the great balancing act. Anyway, let's do it. The 5 headlines from Barcelona's 2-0 win over Cadiz. Headline 1 is time for something. Unfortunately, I feel like we do have to talk about Ansu and Ferran Torres together. I was considering breaking this up, but I think because of almost the juxtaposition between the two, they're going to be spoken about kind of as one topic. So for starting with Ansu, who you're going to have to say, because Ferran Torres had a positive performance and Ansu had a largely negative performance, I'm trying to figure out why that was. I think first and foremost, Ansu is showing way too much of the ball when dribbling in 1v1 situations, and Cadiz was just too easy to take the ball off him. There's also things about his performance where his confidence clearly wasn't there that are uncharacteristic of a player who has any bit of self-belief. He whiffed on the ball in the 14th minute, whiffed again in the 65th minute, and for him, I had to say though, Ansu did have other good moments that I hope that he can hold on to. He had a nice move in the 71st minute right before he came off the field, and for the first goal, he had some good ball retention on a turn from a poor Balde pass. The ball goes over to the right, Torres goes by 2 more, and Ferran's cross finds Lewandowski. Roberto getting the rebound, obviously, and scoring that first goal. But that first goal all begins on a good run of play by Ansu. For Balde, that could have been a turnover, but instead, Ansu made the most of it, if you will, and got himself free to get that ball in possession for Barcelona. They kept it, and some other players did some good things. They put the ball in the back of the net. And I do hope he remembers those kind of things, because clearly, seeing his body language on the bench afterwards, he is desperate, more than desperate, for a goal. Whether it's the stuff from his agent, himself, not only his self-belief, but also wanting more minutes and wanting to be able to play himself into form. And it is that catch-22 where I completely see both sides of this. For Ansu, he wants to play more. He wants to get a good run of form. 90 minutes would be really helpful for him. Even 70 minutes would be helpful for him. But he's not going to get those, especially in important matches like Manchester United on Thursday. His performance is not good enough for a player to help his team get results at present time, unfortunately. But the opposite of that is that Ansu is the number 10 for Barcelona. They've invested so much in him, not only money-wise, but in terms of what he could mean for their future. So you'd want to make sure that you can play him through these downtimes so we can have some positive times. But that means that you have to play through it and maybe forego some positive results. And Barcelona as a club are so desperate to win the Liga and so desperate to win any bit of silverware this year, even Ansu is not bigger than the club, if you will, in that sense. So again, I totally understand that Ansu, and I would love to see Ansu just get minutes, just get some time, get some starts, get something, anything to find some confidence in his game, because it's not happening for him. Ferran Torres, though, believe it or not, I don't know how much this really changed big picture for him. He might just turn back into a pumpkin the next time he goes out, but you have to give him credit on the day. He did get the time, he did get the start, he did get the minutes, and he's the one that showed you something. It all kind of started for him the 17th minute. He had a really good run, and he went, wait a second, we haven't seen that Ferran Torres in months and months and months. And then again in the 21st minute, he stuck into 2 tackles and got himself a shot. And again, he was showing those flashes where you said, maybe Ferran Torres has it there. Then the goal comes. Again, he goes by 2 more, finding Lewandowski on the cross, a perfect cross from Ferran Torres, Lewandowski's header. Terrific stop there on the line by Cadiz's defense, but Roberto, as I said before, there for it. Unfortunately, not to be too negative about the Ferran stuff, but I'm really excited that Ferran Torres had such a great day. But the biggest problem for him is that his best position at Barcelona is where 2 players who are quite better than him are already playing, that being Dembélé on the right and Rafinha on the right. So it's hard to imagine he's ever going to get a run of games where he's at his absolute best. And performances like this will likely never be a regular occurrence for him. So as much as I'd love to have him be able to take the ball and run with it, even starting him on the left against Manchester United, Ferran on the left, even what we saw to end the game, may not be the same Ferran Torres that played so well today on the right. So it is kind of frustrating that Dembélé, Rafinha, and Ferran Torres, who at the moment, just again, based on the 190-minute performance from Ferran Torres, that those are Barcelona's most 3 in-form wingers. Reason is they don't play anybody on the left, usually with the 4 midfielders, but they don't have enough midfielders to do that either, which I think is actually a perfect transition into headline 2. Headline 2 is without Pedri. So this was the game where I was going to say, what does Xavi's, we'll say, new in-form Barcelona, kind of taking the last 2 months when Barcelona are just winning and winning and winning and winning with the 2 draws. So what is Barcelona's midfield going to do without Pedri? And I think, making a little bit of history here, Sergio Roberto with his 230th start for Barcelona, which did surpass Rivaldo and equaled Stoichkov, which is really interesting when you think of those 2 vaunted names. I know people will say that Roberto has just found a way, especially when Barcelona have struggled in the last few seasons, to just stick around more so than Rivaldo and Stoichkov. But again, it's 230th start for Barcelona. So that means he's been on the field even more than that, which just tells you that he's been trusted by multiple managers through the years. So I don't know what that does for his legacy. I'm going to kind of go after his legacy a little bit in a second here. But Gavi, his 80th appearance for Barcelona, still just 18 years old. Still pretty ridiculous for Gavi to be 18 and already made 80 appearances for Barcelona. But I can sum up this whole headline here about what Barcelona would look like without Pedri is that when you have Roberto as one of the interiors, it's going to be a lot slower of ball movement. And it wasn't necessarily Roberto who was tasked with being able to fill in for Pedri. It was Gavi who played on the right instead of Roberto who played on the left. So the formation also did change for a 4-3-3, but I find it interesting that the responsibility of the right interior, that being Gavi in the situation compared to the left, was a similar job. And I think Barcelona not only were on the front foot for so much of that first half, but Barcelona did get those 2 goals as well because Gavi was arguably, I think, the third best player in this game behind Ferran Torres, Andres Christensen, who we'll talk about in a second, and then it was Gavi. I think those 3 in particular led the charge in this match for Barcelona to take what should have been and what was 3 pretty simple points against Cadiz at home. And it should be noted too, for those who were kind of frustrated with Cadiz finding their way in the second half into the game with those 6 chances, not just 1 or 2 or 3, but 6 chances. All of that kind of did happen once De Jong was subbed out of the game. It wasn't a sparkling performance for De Jong, but I consider it for a player who's, he wanted minutes. He was worried he was going to be a backup center back or forced out of the club in the summertime. Well, Frankie De Jong, I don't think you can come off the field very often. I know he was subbed out of this game because Xavi simply has to be rotating him for Manchester United. That made all the sense in the world to put Kessie on at that point. But once De Jong came out, that's where Barcelona lost control. So I don't know. I'm not going to be that crazy about how Barcelona did struggle against Cadiz, a team who are facing relegation. Okay, and it should be noted too that Barca has played twice in the same week, plus thinking about Manchester United. So it's not like Barcelona gave 100% effort in that second half. It always was kind of comfortable with that 2-0 lead. Now, if that foul on Ter Stegen doesn't happen and negates the Cadiz goal, but it wasn't, and Barcelona were always up 2-0. But losing control does have its negative stuff. Again, Roberto as that pivot, it really wasn't working for Barcelona to continue having control in the match. Same thing with Kessie also taking on a much larger responsibility. It's just that's not those players. That's not their style. That's not going to happen without somebody like Busquets mainly, or De Jong, or Pedri, all players who can control the game much better than that duo. It also means, though, that losing control means that Pablo Torre was going to spend much of the second half warming up, but wasn't going to get his chance. And these games really are the only time he'll be getting. We did talk about it on the latest podcast, and I'll probably be writing an article for Barca Blog on him in the next few days, so I'm not going to harp too much about a player who did not play in this game, but yeah, certainly for those Pablo Torre stands out there, frustrating to not see him on the field, at least on how Alacant did get his chance. He committed a foul, but hey, he ran his pants off, and I think he actually did, that being the 18-year-old, help bring a bit of intensity back to that front line that Lewandowski in the second half, I think he was getting ready for Manchester United. Speaking of Manchester United, Mr. Christensen, Xavi probably should have started Andres Christensen against Manchester United. We saw that again with his performance today. And along with Eric Garcia, he read that first half offside perfectly. That was really the only danger from Cadiz in the first 45 minutes. He was also, that being Christensen, really reactive to the moments when Koundé got forward as the right center back. And for Christensen, who's been playing on the left, he seems to be comfortable as he's been all season, just solid in anything that Xavi has asked him to be. Today, next to Eric Garcia, who is kind of the more vocal leader, it's interesting the way those two, Christensen kind of led with his legs and led by example, if you will, and Eric Garcia, you could clearly tell when he's on the field, vocally he's a leader, he's orchestrating things, talking things through, and then also using his, as I keep saying and mentioning, superior passing to continue to put pressure on that Cadiz back line that I think really did wear them down for those 2 first half goals to happen. There were also important defensive moments for Christensen. 52nd minute tackle was simply huge. And very much like Christensen, Koundé this time goes back to his Liga form as opposed to what we saw in Champions League. And Ter Stegen, he had a wild day, sure, but still a clean sheet happens. Regardless of how it happens, still a clean sheet and making some history too. Barca becoming the first team in the Liga history to keep 17 clean sheets in the first 22 games of a Liga season, breaking Deportivo La Coruña's record from the 1993-94 season where they had 16 clean sheets in their first 22 games. So I don't need to tell you that. Ter Stegen also making a bit of history, on pace to have the most clean sheets in the Liga history for a goalkeeper. Also for Ter Stegen, his 357 start for Barcelona, surpassing the great Pep Guardiola. So again, interesting to note that Ter Stegen, I know it still feels like because he's a guy now that he hasn't been there for a long time, but Ter Stegen has been in our lives for 8 years if you're an FC Barcelona fan, and he's been the number one for a considerable amount of that time. Now, finally, for Eric Garcia, Xavi did say beforehand that he did want to give him minutes and that he was being unfair to him. And what is true is that obviously, and this time, yes, Cadiz is fighting a relegation battle in the Liga. Even an unfit Eric Garcia should be able to be one of the few players rotated. And honestly, regardless of the Manchester United result, I would start him next week against Almeria, that being Eric Garcia, because Almeria are in rough form and Eric should be able to start that game. If Barca beat United, I would even consider starting Alonso and Eric Garcia together. It might be headaches for Culés, sure. There's going to be some nervy moments, but I do think that even that center-back duo should be able to handle Almeria at the moment. But we'll have to see what Xavi does, and we'll have to see what happens on Thursday. The only knock on this back line, who did have that clean sheet today, was that Cadiz did keep winning the first ball on set pieces, corners, throw-ins, and all the like. But if you do watch a few of those Roberto and Eric Garcia positionings, as well as Balde, I'm a little less concerned with Christensen, and Ter Stegen did have his moments, uncharacteristic. I don't expect him to do the same thing, and I thought Koundé was actually pretty solid on those set pieces as well. So you add Ronald Araujo back into that equation, and that is not something that I think is going to carry over to be a worry against Manchester United. All right, headline 4, Lewandowski's one and done. The Lewandowski goal put the game away, and it was one of the rare moments that he actually got on the ball in a spot to set something up. Against that low block, then a mid-block of Cadiz when they were looking to try to put numbers forward, he had to drop in quite a bit, that being Lewandowski, to make numbers in that makeshift midfield. And then he would also switch fully with Ansu out to the wing, something he doesn't do when Gabi is playing as an inside forward. Gabi always stays underneath him. So Lewandowski spent quite a bit of time on the left, actually, in that first half, supporting Balde and Roberto, when Roberto would also kind of move centrally a bit when Gabi would get forward onto the right. And then also when Kessie came on, Lewandowski was doing the same thing. So there were numerical overloads on the left that Lewandowski was contributing to. And believe it or not, that actually is what led to the second goal. Roberto with a dribble because De Jong got forward, not minimizing the attack. And while Lewandowski didn't begin the second goal that way, it was his movement earlier on. It was expecting him to come in and drop in, which he did prior to the run by De Jong. So Roberto has a dribble because De Jong got forward for a rare time because they were expecting Lewandowski to come into that space. Instead, Lewandowski kind of just hung out in the middle there. And I don't want to minimize the assist at all from Roberto, sure, but that was a confident Lewandowski goal. He faced up the goal the whole way, set himself up, and finished, the goals being 3 minutes apart. I think a lot of different people said it well, that Lewandowski only really showed up for one moment in this game, and then he was kind of done with it, but it was the only moment that he needed to be in because they were able to put Cadiz away. Now you just want him to give more moments, because against Manchester United, it does take more than just one chance like this. They're not going to give him that kind of space. So you need Lewandowski to show up on more than one occasion against Man U in a way he didn't against Cadiz today. And speaking of, again, headline 5, decisions for Manchester United. If you were one of those that hoped that Barca would come out of the game against Cadiz with more answers about who should play against Man U, I think you came out of this one a bit disappointed. Rafinha was rightly rotated, and Gabi played 90 because he's suspended on Thursday, but Gabi did a fine job filling in for Pedri. And so I'm not really sure there's another answer at that spot as I already spoke about. It's not Roberto, it's not Kessie or De Jong. And that's a big problem for Xavi, even if he plays a 4-3-3. But again, it won't be Ferran Torres on the right. Rafinha will be on the right. And Ansu definitely isn't right to start on the left. Or at least at the moment, it's a gamble for Xavi to start Ansu. Busquets will be starting, we know that, as will Christensen and Koundé likely, and Araujo definitely, he was rotated as well. So I don't know what Xavi will do, and maybe that's a good thing that I don't know, but honestly, the answer not jumping off the page to me has me a bit concerned. I do feel like in Xavi's time in charge, and for those who've been with me for a while, you know this, that I don't know, I feel like Xavi does make some pretty pragmatic and dogmatic moves, and you can kind of guess what he's going to do. It's just, do the players fulfill their obligations to what Xavi put forward? But this time around, I'm not really sure. So I think that'll do it for this one, though. The podcast is expected Tuesday with a little something different and a new face here. FC Barcelona related, by the way. And then look out for the Manchester United content later in the week. Plus, you keep tabs on barcablog.com. That's where I have everything, the podcast, videos, articles, all that. And I also might let a few more words loose this week, but we'll have to see about how that schedule works. But as always, until next time, Forza Barca.